Josh, Costa, thank you so much, buddy, for hopping on here today. Hopefully we've debunked all your voice issues that we were having earlier in our warm-ups here. Listen, we were just talking about video. You guys just bought a video company and you're releasing video products. Can you want to kind of start us off with giving a little bit of an overview of yourself and that particular question as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I'll highlight is I think most people think of Verizon as an ISP or a cell phone company, but we actually fall under Verizon Business Services, and as part of that, we have a vast array of cybersecurity services and professional services offerings. So my team in particular, the Verizon Threat Research Advisory Center, we are part of the organization that helps external organizations outside of Verizon with responding to cybersecurity incidents. So we have several hundred customers that have us on retainer. Anytime they have a cybersecurity incident that they want to deal with, we've got a 24/7 hotline. They pick up the phone and we're helping walk them through the incident response lifecycle, all the way from detecting an incident, collecting evidence sources, investigating, and then ultimately figuring out what happened and helping them get back to a remediation point.
So I too know Verizon and Verizon Business Services. Actually, I'd like to say that it was the first company that gave me a job when I graduated college. So thank you. It's hence the reason why we're all here today. There's a lot of questions I want to talk about, but one of probably the biggest one that's more applicable to everybody that's listening is your incredible report. Your reporting that you guys have put out there time and time again is always known as kind of the benchmark from a security perspective, or one of them. We too are now entering into that space from an analytics and research at Avant and providing a different purview than what's out there in the market today. But you just released your new report today. Any tidbits, anything you want to share? I know it's something we're going to probably talk a little bit about on the panel, but just kind of talk a little bit about the report and anything new that's kind of popping out.
Yeah, absolutely. So coincidentally, 2020 DBIR is out. So I'd encourage everyone to go ahead and Google it and pull down the report. It's a free resource. But I think one of the things that was highlighted in the report, and really what we're seeing in our caseload every day, is what I say, threat actors are what I like to call equal opportunity attackers, right? And what we're seeing is that organizations of all shapes and sizes are falling victim to cybersecurity attacks, right? So these smaller organizations, 1,000 employees or less, 500 employees, these guys are falling victim to the same exact attacks that larger organizations are falling victim to. And this is especially true for, you hit on ransomware earlier in the presentation, but especially true for ransomware. We're seeing in the headlines, it feels like every week, where municipalities or small school districts are being hit with ransomware. And I think the reason that that's happening is because these organizations may not necessarily have the backup infrastructure or the ability to respond to some of these incidents in the way that larger organizations may. So as a result, you end up in a situation where they're more likely to pay the ransom. So one of the other things that I think I want to highlight is that as small and large organizations alike start moving towards digital transformation and moving to cloud-based infrastructures or SaaS offerings, in moving to those cloud-based platforms, we're seeing threat actors follow. And really, as a result, we're seeing a situation where cloud data is really under attack. And one of the key findings from this year's report is that web application attacks have actually doubled since last year. So what we're seeing is that 43% of breaches have some aspect of a web application that's involved. So as we move to platforms like e-commerce and move to these cloud-based infrastructures, I think it's really important that we start to think about how organizations are protecting some of those web applications and what's happening at the perimeter.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everything is just happening so fast. It's going to be really, really interesting, the next report that comes out, just because of the turmoil that we're all going through in terms of changing it up, mixing it up. But, does the work from home model change how you build security and how you guys are giving advice around that? I mean, it's kind of a dumb question, but because it's an obvious one, but talk a little bit about that right now.
Yeah, I think there's some major challenges that a lot of organizations are facing right now in light of COVID-19, and And I think in particular, the work from home scenario, not only has it resulted in organizations really having to move quickly and get their workforce up and running and working from home, really in some cases without providing them with, that cybersecurity guidance or best practices to follow. I think that opens up the attack landscape there. But then in addition to that, when I think about it from an incident responder's perspective and the defenders who are responding to some of these incidents, when you're not sitting in the same SOC, and you're not sitting in the same room, I think incident collaboration becomes a lot more difficult. You end up in a situation where maybe you don't have access to the same tools, or they don't perform the same way that you would expect over VPN. So in a situation where you have more and more individuals working from home, I think it's particularly important that organizations are paying attention to what's happening, and they're providing their workforce with the appropriate recommendations to try to protect themselves from some of these attacks.
Love it. Last question. We'll make this one quick because I think this is something that we could even dip into when we get into the panel as well. But, I've been talking a lot as I speak around the country in different events about everything needs to be simple. If you look at things that are most successful right now, it's about how simple they made that complex on the back end, right? And when I think about it, when you design product and complex security requirements, you don't want to overwhelm end users. And I feel like that is sometimes the reason why people don't go as far as they should around security, is because they don't want to piss off salespeople, right? But in all honesty, like, how can we make that complex simple? Are there any tips and tricks that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, because generally when you see breaches that are hitting the news, I think the message is how complex the attack was, right? And from our perspective, and we've actually opened up a new line of research about this last year, and then starting into and continuing into this year, is that we're seeing most attacks happen in 5 steps or less, right? And it's for a couple of reasons. One, it's easier for the attacker, it's less expensive, and generally speaking, if they can get in quickly and get out quickly, they're going to be better off. So I think what's important is that we're reinforcing with people really the basic, underlying simple security hygiene. And if you take a look at our DBIR, I think that's one of the things that is highlighted most, is that it's not very complicated. It's social engineering. It's the use of stolen credentials. We're seeing that in more than 40% of cases, that where threat actors are compromising organizations and breaching data, it's either it's credentials that are stolen or social engineering attacks. So if you focus on those foundational items, I think you're better off.
I love it. And it kind of helps us get into this next segment here, where we're going to have everybody join us, a couple more guests as well from panelists. But what I really love about that too is, for everybody that's listening, the hundreds and hundreds of people that are on here, from your CISO to your CIO to your director of IT to security, you name it, you have to understand that we are all here as trusted advisors, the platform, the service providers, to help you. And I can't stress it enough. A lot of us will sacrifice our time to come into your organizations to see if we find any of these holes. And it's really why this is the golden era of the trusted advisor. I think Ian and I would both say that, and I think all of our service providers would agree with that. That service provider becomes that beacon for all of you, for those companies that are looking to identify the potential gaps that they have inside of their organization, but also that extension to some of these teams that are doing things that no IT staff could ever do on their own. And we're going to get into that right now. We're going to talk about it with the State of Security killer panel. I love panels like this. I wish we were in person, but we're not. We're virtual. And so we've got just an incredible group of folks.